Mr. Chairman and board members. Yes, I believe the intent also is to run through this presentation and then hold questions until after the public comment period as well.
If we can, that would be good.
If we can, certainly. So, just a quick summary. As you know, the business plan is required every 2 years, and legislation describes what the contents of that need to be. As you noted, we are on track to submit this plan on schedule to the legislature. We laid out in the draft plan, and it's continued in the final plan, key fundamentals to this plan in terms of how we are going to move this program forward. And one of the key principles is to get into operations as soon as we can. That's so that we can start delivering the benefits of high-speed rail service to the people of California, start seeing the major GHG reductions, the major benefits of connectivity that will come with operations, and very importantly, to engage the private sector participation that has always been anticipated in this program and has been reaffirmed in this plan. The second key fundamental is to make concurrent strategic investments throughout the state to demonstrate local benefits, to improve local commuter services, intercity rail services, and throughout the state wherever we can, ultimately tying all those together in the full Phase 1 system. And then third, to continue and complete the environmental approvals required statewide so that we can develop the full system and be ready to move those segments forward as we complete them. These, again, are the key highlights in terms of some of the figures in the draft. These do not change in the staff recommendations. We're not modifying cost estimates or ridership estimates based on input or based on any additional review. But again, we lay out the plan of getting into operation with the valley-to-valley line. We do have some modifications of that, which I will discuss in a moment. As the chairman noted, we will continue to take some comments on the staff recommendations. This is how we have received comments to date, and it will be similar going forward. We've had, in addition to our own public comment process, we've had 3 hearings in the state legislature, a total of 5 committees involved in those, where we took, those were specifically on the draft business plan, and so there was opportunity for the legislature to weigh in directly, as well as the public to comment there. And I will say that we took those hearings as comments into the plan, and you'll see some in the staff recommendations, some things that came directly out of the legislative hearings. And of course, we've continued to work closely with our regional partners, and you'll see that reflected as well in the plan. As of the 18th, we had received a total of over 218 comments covering a range of issues, came in through a variety of mechanisms. A number of those came in late in the process, and that's one of the reasons we want to make sure the board has ample opportunity to consider and deliberate those. Again, our recommendations today do incorporate all of the comments that we have received, incorporate the review and any necessary change based on all the comments that have come in on those. Oops. So let me talk a little bit about where the comments grouped. And key comments dealt with geographic issues, and those were largely communities, cities who were concerned about potentially being either not included or what the impact of service would be on them. The first one that I'll talk about is Merced. And as you know, in previous plans, the initial operating segment was planned to run from Merced down through the valley into Southern California. This draft plan changed that to have an operating leg that ran from the Central Valley up through Fresno and then across over to Gilroy and here to San Jose. Communities in Merced were concerned about not being part of that initial operation, and so we have, and they've made those concerns very clear, as have local agencies working with them. We have worked closely with leaders in Merced, legislators, supervisors, elected officials, and agencies, and what we are recommending in the plan is that the board adopt a position that the goal is to include Merced in the initial operations, and to do that through constructing part of the Y to connect from Merced over to Gilroy and here to San Jose. And to do that initially, potentially with a single-track option in order to reduce the cost and be able to get that service into place sooner. Elements of that will be our commitment to get the environmental reviews completed there, continuing to work with the City of Merced on station area planning. Very importantly, working with our partners at ACE, at the San Joaquins, and others on connectivity issues and how we can really create a network in Northern California. One element of that also is we are proposing in the staff recommendations the addition of a stop at Madera. Madera would provide connectivity to the San Joaquins directly through a cross-platform transfer, essentially. And we will, as we go forward, now we'll be looking at options of how we can refine the cost of creating this connection to Merced, as well as working with our partners at how we can identify funding options, and of course analyzing specifically ridership and revenue forecasting so that we can ensure that this line can be operated consistent with law. Second area of geographic comments was from the City of Bakersfield and Kern County, and we heard those expressed at the board meetings as well as at legislative hearings. The issue there being over an interim station in Shafter, which we had included in the draft. It being there because that's the southern terminus of our existing contracts. In the staff recommendations, what you'll see is clarification that our goal is to not have an interim station, but to be able to go all the way into Bakersfield as part of the initial service. If there is a need for an interim station because of insufficient funding, that we are evaluating shifting that station north to Wasco to connect at the Amtrak station there rather than being in Shafter. We're also clarifying that we are moving forward aggressively with the work to continue the clearance of the alignment into the City of Bakersfield with the full intent of moving forward on that segment. And in fact, the board will be meeting in Bakersfield next month to underscore that commitment. We also had some comment about, obviously, the strong interest from the City of San Francisco and others on the peninsula of making sure that we got not just to San Jose, but also up the peninsula, and we're certainly clarifying, confirming that, reaffirming the commitment to work with Caltrain on the electrification project to have that in place, as well as to identify whatever improvements would be necessary to run our service there. And also clarifying that the Transbay Transit Center is the ultimate destination, and we are committed to working with our partners to see that achieved. Finally, the other major area of geographic concern came from Southern California, and with the shift to getting initial operations in the north, concerns from Southern California agencies and locals about our commitment, our ability to continue to move forward and advance the project, get to Los Angeles, get to Anaheim, and to make interim improvements. We have worked very closely with our partner agencies there, SCAG playing the coordinating role, but working with all of the transportation agencies as well as the City of Anaheim to reaffirm our commitment to the MOU that we entered into with those 8 entities in 2012, to lay out a clear path forward to advance specific projects in that corridor. And those individual projects, some of which our goal is to work with our partners to have those moving forward this year. We've talked at previous meetings about specific improvements like the Rosecrans-Marquardt grade separation project. That single project will improve rail capacity by over 60% in Southern California. Tremendous benefits to Orange County, to the Inland Empire, and to Los Angeles. And we'll be working with our partners, committing to moving that project forward in partnership with them. We have worked closely, as I said, with SCAG and have confirmed with Hassan Akrata, who testified at legislative hearings, that our response in this plan is consistent with their interests and that we are committed to moving forward in partnership. Beyond the geographic interest, we also had some subject matter issues, which comments that came in, and we'll run through those, and I'll ask some of our technical experts to join me in a little bit more elaboration on these. One being Phase 2 and where we are in that. Concerns about relative lack of discussion of the Phase 2 segments and the importance of continuing to move forward. So you will see in the staff recommendations significantly enhanced discussion of Phase 2, of how we are working with our partners to move that forward, and what we will be doing there on that. Ridership estimates has also been a question, and I will ask Thierry to come up. Thierry Prade, who's on our staff, talk about that. But we had some questions raised about the underlying analysis that has been done about ridership and revenue.
Good morning, Mr. Prate.
Chairman Richard, member of the board, good morning. My name is Thierry Pratt. I work with the ridership, and I'm a member of the Rail Delivery Partner.
Could you step a little closer, Thierry, to the microphone?
Yes.
Thank
you. Is that better?
Yes.
Thank you. So the team looked at all the comments received with regards to ridership and revenue forecast. We didn't really identify any comments that were not addressed in the business plan or in the model documentation we have put online with the business plan. We can group the comments into 4 categories of issues. I'm going to go through those issues very quickly to present the question we got. The first one, really the main question, was the increase of the ridership and revenue that was in the 2016 business plan relative to the 2014 forecast we have. This one is a very straightforward answer. In the 2016 plan, as you've noted, we have now a system that reaches Anaheim, and that generates additional ridership and revenue because we reach a further, distance in the Southern California and reaching more attraction on that. The second was questions around how we use the survey data that goes into the model. Specifically, whether the survey that was conducted around the Phase 1 system were appropriate to be used for forecasting the valley-to-valley ridership. Again, we explained this in the model documentation. What is important to understand is through those surveys, we are trying to understand the travel characteristic or the travel attributes of the respondent, such as propensity to switch from one mode to another. So we look at cost, time, comfort, frequency of travel, etc. So in that regard, the length of the system is not directly relevant for the data we use in the model. The third one is how we've used and set our fares for the model. Some comments said our fares were too low. Some comments said our fares were too high. Again, what is critical to understand here is we have using an average fare to incorporate and determine the ridership. Like an airline, our future high-speed rail operator will have the possibility to develop the fare systems, and we'll be able to have optimization of those fares, so more attractive fares for some population or more longer fares. And finally, a topic that's been coming up really since the 2012 business plan. We asked how we deal with people traveling as a group in a car. And the model, again, is understand this piece, and we have a variable that apply a group travel average size per car. In other words, if we have more than 1 people driving the car, the model account for the fact that it's cheaper for each passenger and therefore relatively more attractive to another person. So really, this is very quick. We got a lot of comments. I think a lot of this documentation is online with the draft business plan section, but also with the ridership section of the authority website. I think you have that's it for me.
Thank you.
Yeah. So similarly, we got some comments on the operations and maintenance forecast. Here we got two broad categories of issue raised to us, and none of these are strictly new. I mean, the first one is we are asked why we're not comparing our costs directly with services on the Amtrak Acela or even with some other Amtrak routes. I think the authority has previously made the case that the direct comparison with the Acela services is not appropriate for our systems. I mean, the Acela is a significantly different system, and we actually compare our costs more with international systems in Europe or in Asia. The second series of comment we got was, again, coming from a 2014 or 2012 review that was done by the International Union of Railway, the UIC. The UIC looked at our model in 2012, provide recommendations for us to enhance and improve the model, which we did in the 2014 business plan. And all those recommendations, when appropriate, were included in our forecast. So in this time round, for the 2016 business plan, we have asked the Network Rail people that are now part of the RDP. Network Rail is the rail infrastructure manager that are running and operating and in enhancing the UK systems. To review our models, we incorporate some of their input, and we essentially use this model for this business plan.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thierry.
One of the other key areas of topical discussion was the question of funding and financing the system. Funding in the sense of, in particular, we heard from both policy committees in the legislature, a strong interest in seeing greater discussion of how the remainder of the Phase 1 system could be funded. And so what you'll see in the staff recommendations is an expanded discussion of that. I think it's important to note in that a little bit of history, that when Proposition 1A passed, when the legislature approved it, when the voters approved it, it provided less than a quarter of what was then estimated as the cost of delivering the system, but said to proceed, to move forward, recognizing that the balance would have to be developed over time. And since that time, a tremendous amount of progress has been made, and it's reflected in this plan. At the time, there was no other existing source of funding, state or federal, for high-speed rail. Since that time, we've secured billions of dollars of federal support. Obviously, the governor proposed and the legislature committed cap-and-trade funding on an ongoing basis. And as seen in this plan, the pathway to get to private investment is clearly there and clearly laid out. And the expectation of approximately 1/3 of the total funding for the program coming from the private sector, you can see how we can get there, and get there by getting into operation, by monetizing and monetizing the revenues. And so we've made a tremendous amount of progress, and what this plan, what we're recommending in the draft, in the staff recommendations are, again, expanded discussion, as well as some expanded discussion of federal participation going forward. Proposition 1A clearly assumed that the federal government would play a role in delivering this project. As the chairman has noted on other occasions, the federal government has always played a role in major infrastructure projects. You look at the interstate highway system, 90 to, in some cases, 100% of the cost of developing the interstate system, I-5, here in the state, 280 others, 90 to 100% was borne by the federal government. And we are seeing, and I'll ask Kurt Ramey, who does our financial advisory work, to talk a little bit more about some of the particulars, but we do include expanded discussion of what we believe is a very appropriate role for the federal government to play going forward, and also the private sector participation.
Thanks, Jeff, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you, Chairman Richard, and members of the board. I am Kurt Ramey. I'm with KPMG, and we're the financial advisor for the authority. There's actually two areas when they put the next slide up, it's going to talk about the other area of question, which was the potential for private investment. And really, these things are interrelated because it is private investment that will actually be part of the funding for the remainder of the Phase 1 system. So I'm going to take the two areas together a bit. First, on the private investment. The 2016 draft business plan and the final reaffirms the authority's plan that's been in place for several years to raise private investment through operating concessions as incremental segments are completed and opened for operations and revenue is proven. So basically, it creates the business opportunity, a commercial opportunity, where the private sector can invest and allows money to be rolled forward to future development of segments. Throughout the last 2 years, we've met with, the authority has met with a large number of concessionaires, investors, interested developers, and to a T, we've seen confirmation of this strategy. In addition, just looking external to the authority and even external to California, the market for raising capital secured by large infrastructure, stable infrastructure projects with proven revenues is very robust. Just last spring, the state of Indiana managed the sale of its operating concession for the Indiana Toll Road, which is a 157-mile toll road across the state. There's an operating entity that is responsible for operations and maintenance, kind of similar to our concession strategy. The sale price for that concession was $5.7 billion. Big number, so big money is available. But more importantly, 30 times projected earnings, actually exceeded 30 times projected earnings, and far exceeded the valuation estimate that the market sort of was discussing and the client was discussing at the time. Government agencies in Texas, Ohio, New York are all looking at this strategy of monetizing existing assets, and we're seeing just a continued growth in this area. And it's across rail, it's across parking, it's across utilities. So we are confident in this part of the strategy. There's been, as Jeff mentioned, additional information added to the plan related to funding of Phase 1. So step 1 is this monetization strategy, but step 2 is additional public funding and including additional federal support. As Jeff mentioned, federal funding has always been part of the plan, but I would like to point out 2 recent actions that illustrates that there continues to be support for intercity rail at the federal level. Just last week, or this week actually, the Senate Appropriations Subcommittee for Transportation, Housing, and Urban Development approved their 2017 appropriations bill. And it included money for consolidated rail infrastructure and state of good repair. This was a discussion that was long coming, but it's moving forward in the current federal structure. So it's a modest start. It's not huge, it's modest, but it is a start. Probably on a larger scale and more significant is the federal government recently signed an MOU with the governors of New York and New Jersey, where the federal government will support 50% of the $25 billion Gateway Tunnel project. And the federal government support is a combination of both funding and financing. It's a combination of those 2 things. But an agreement was reached, and a document was signed, and an intent was certainly created for the federal government to support that project in a major way. All of these are signals that the federal government continues to be interested in intercity rail, and that is part of the plan that has been part of the information that's been added to the plan.
Thank you.
Finally, Board, I'll just note, in addition to the staff recommended changes, which are substantive changes to the draft, we also have an errata sheet which has been provided to the Board and to the public for their review, correcting anything from grammatical to numerical mistakes which are not substantive or policy-driven in nature, and so you have that as well. All of those, again, are available on the website as well as to the board. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I think we can move to comment.
Okay.
Unless you have-
Thank you very much, Mr. Morales. And I want to commend everybody who worked on this document and the staff for a lot of hard work to analyze the public comments, as well as to work with partners and potential partners in Southern California, here in the Bay Area, and in Merced. So with that, I'm going to Mr. Correa, do you have a question you wanted to ask?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have questions and some comments, if I may.
All right, please.
Mr. Morales, first of all, I want to thank you for the fine presentation, but I was in the legislature when this program began, and I voted for this program. And as I voted to move this high-speed rail project forward, 3 conditions were the ones I stated would have to be met. Number one, that veteran and small business set-aside contracts, that our obligation to our veterans would be fulfilled, and it looks like we have so far. The other one would be private investment would play a role, and I think you've outlined your proposal and possibility of essentially securitizing some of the future revenues. So you want to get this line operating as quickly as possible. The third requirement is the one that I'm a little having trouble here, which was that this line touch and go through Anaheim and through Southern California. So now we're looking at realigning. I'm not going to put any words in your mouth here, but we're discussing here not going to Southern California, but we're looking at what?
Sure. Let me,
What are we doing here?
Sure. Let me talk on your 3 points. First, you're right, on the disabled veteran business, we do have a contractual requirement in all of our contracts, and we've met that on every one. We've got currently, I believe the number's 32 disabled veteran businesses under contract working on the project statewide, and yes, the private sector participation we deal with. In terms of Anaheim specifically, I really want to note the strong partnership we have with Anaheim, not just the city, but also the business community in and around Anaheim, and their very strong interest in ensuring.
Anaheim and the County of Orange business.
The Orange County Business Council has been a steadfast supporter, as has the Chamber of Commerce and key businesses like Disney, who see the value of connecting Anaheim to the rest of the state through a new mode. And so we've worked with them to do that, and this plan reflects that. When we talk about delivering the program and the first operating segment being in the north, that's a phasing or sequencing issue. It's not in any way, shape, or form a retreat from the commitment to build the full Phase 1 system. What we are proposing in this plan.
So, Mr. Morales, we're phasing now. We're moving to prioritize, or in terms of timeline, move to build this northern portion first, but what are we going to continue to do? Are we going to continue to have activity in Southern California?
Yes, and so what's in the draft and now in the staff recommended changes are it's some updated discussion of it, but is an initial investment of approximately $4 billion in the Burbank to Anaheim corridor.
And that would happen when?
Some of that would begin right away. We've already, in fact, the board approved in March, I believe it was, an initial investment in Union Station, which will have as part of that process. We are working with Anaheim on.
So that's
grade
in Los
separation.
Angeles. What about the Anaheim area?
In
Orange
Anaheim,
County?
we have, obviously, the Arctic Station is there, which will be our terminus ultimately. We're working with Anaheim on key grade separation projects that will happen there. Ball
When will
Road,
that
Orange
happen?
Thorpe, Orange Thorpe. The environmental reviews are underway on those, and the plan is to then move into construction as quickly as we can. Hopefully, we'll see the intent is that we would see the first construction of some of the grade separations this year and then early into next year. Those benefits would accrue locally before, obviously, they get incorporated into the full high-speed rail system. Some of the other things that we will be doing as part of our investment in that corridor include safety and security upgrades, fencing the corridor, because we'll be in a shared corridor. Right now, safety is an issue, as it is here on the peninsula, with people being able to access the tracks, fatalities occurring, injuries occurring, traffic issues. I mentioned the Rosecrans-Marquardt grade separation, which is north of Anaheim in LA, but it has huge implications for Orange County and Anaheim because of the Orange County service that runs through there. That capacity will be increased by over 50%. So Metrolink service into Anaheim.
That is occurring
will grow.
today.
That's a project that will be underway this year through our partnership with the local agencies there, and will have huge benefits for Anaheim there. And ultimately, as we get there, obviously the connectivity of tying together the modes of transportation in Fullerton first, north, even where you see the connectivity to the Inland Empire with Amtrak service, Metrolink, and then as we get into Anaheim with Arctic of tying together the local transit services to feed people out. So major benefits to the city of Anaheim, to the region. And another important element that is in the plan that is funded in the authority's budget is the completion of the environmental work between Los Angeles and Anaheim to make sure that all of the improvements can be made as the dollars are available to make them.
So as you move ahead with this, or this proposed plan is moving ahead, presume you've been talking, as you mentioned earlier, with SCAG, City of Anaheim, Los Angeles region. Have your discussions been in the form of a notification, or have you been talking to them about essentially concurring with this new plan?
It's been on a number of different levels. We have working groups ongoing at the staff level. We meet with the senior executives, Chairman Richard, along with CalSTA Secretary Brian Kelly, and I went down recently and met with all the executives there to agree on policy direction and strategic direction. We've worked directly on, we got comments on the draft business plan from the agencies, Anaheim included, and through SCAG, and we have confirmed with them that the plan we are laying out, the recommendations we are laying out.
You met with Anaheim, SCAG, and they have concurred, not just,
yes,
just not notified, but
right.
They actually are concurring with this proposal that you're laying out now.
That we have responded to their concerns and that we have a plan to go forward and work together to implement the direction.
I have some phone calls to make this week. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay.